I'm privileged to be here today to interview the Honorable Charles R. Wilson, Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. He is a former U.S. Attorney, a former federal magistrate, and judge for the 13th Judicial Circuit in and for Hillsborough County, Florida. Judge Wilson was appointed to the U.S. Circuit Court in August of 1999 after serving 4 years as the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. He has also served as a federal magistrate for the Middle District for 4 years. Prior to his federal service, we are honored to have Judge Wilson serve 4 years as a county judge in the 13th Judicial Circuit. We're meeting today at Judge Wilson's office in the Sam M. Gibbons Federal Courthouse in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, Judge Wilson, and again, may I say what a privilege and an honor it is to be able to meet with you today to discuss professionalism.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Tell us about your professional career starting with college.
Well, after graduating from Jesuit High School of Tampa, I knew that I always wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to go to law school, but I thought that it was important that I leave the state of Florida because I really did not know what opportunities were going to be available to me when I graduated from high school, so I decided to attend both college and law school at the University of Notre Dame. And when I graduated from law school, I think one of the best decisions that I ever made was to return back home to Florida. And I was admitted into the bar in 1979 when I graduated from law school. And my first job was in the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office. And the county attorney at the time was Bert Grandolph, who also served as a member of the Board of Governors of the Florida Bar. In fact, he was the guest speaker during the induction ceremony when I was sworn in to the Florida Bar. So it was a very nice pleasure to have him as the guest speaker when I was sworn in as a member of the Florida Bar, and he was my first employer as a lawyer. And I worked in the county attorney's office for about a year, and right about that time, President Carter appointed former Supreme Court Justice Joseph Hatchett to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. And I sent him an application to serve as his law clerk. And I was selected to serve as his law clerk, so I clerked for Judge Hatchett on the Court of Appeals. It was the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals at the time. Later, the court was split into the Fifth and the 11th Circuits. And at the conclusion of my clerkship, I returned to Tampa and opened up my own law practice, and I practiced for 5 years as a sole practitioner. And then after about 5 years, there was a vacancy on the county court in the 13th Judicial Circuit, and I was encouraged to apply for it, and I did. And I was selected and appointed by then Governor Graham to serve as a member of the county court. And I served for 4 years on the county court until a vacancy became available as a United States magistrate judge here in Tampa. I was selected by the district judges of the Middle District of Florida to serve as the United States magistrate judge, and I worked in that capacity for 4 years until an opportunity presented itself to serve as United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. And I served in that capacity for another 4 years until one of my mentors decided to retire from the 11th Circuit, and I was selected to serve as a member of the United States Court of Appeals, where I presently serve.
Well, you certainly have seen a lot of different kinds of courts and different kinds of forums. When you served in the county court, you had a lot of contact with people who couldn't afford an attorney. Could you tell us the challenges of working with people who are pro se litigants?
I think that's the county court. Serving on the county court is where you can have the most impact with people within your community because of the large volume of cases that are serviced by the county courts. And, it's really an opportunity to, increase confidence in our judicial system by ensuring that the rights, all of the rights of those who come to our courts are protected. I thought it was a very valuable experience for me, and So I think you're closer to the people through your service on the county court in relation to any other court.
You've also always been very involved with local bar activities. I see you often at our luncheons and at our seminars serving as a speaker or a host. Can you tell us about your commitment to the legal profession in terms of the bar activities?
You know, that commitment, I think, originated when I was in college and I was a runner for a local law firm, and during the summer when I was home from college. And there was one summer in particular that I clerked, that I was a runner for this law firm, and both the president of the Florida Bar and the president of the Young Lawyers section of the Florida Bar were both members of that law firm. And I saw how important it was for lawyers to participate in the affairs of the bar and the effect that the bar can have on your life and your practice. And I think, you know, those values were inculcated within me then, and I realized the importance of participating in the bar, and it was at that point that I decided that when I became a lawyer, it was very important for me to involve myself in the affairs of the Bar Association.
Who have been your mentors along your way, both in starting with elementary school? I know we said we'd start with college, but I think you've had some really strong role models throughout your life. Could you share them with us?
Well, there have been a number of people who have helped me along the way, and I guess, I'd have to say, my father was a lawyer, and he practiced as a member of the Florida Bar for 40 years as a sole practitioner himself and in government service, and also as a corporate lawyer. And I've been around lawyers all my life. There have been a lot of people, I think, who have helped me along the way, but I would have to say that, the role that he has played in my professional development has probably been the most significant.
And who would be your heroes? Who are the heroes that have influenced your life?
I'm not sure I can point to anyone in particular that I would qualify as a hero other than my parents, who I think have inculcated within me values that I depend upon. I read a lot of biographies of famous people, and just looking back historically, there are people that I have a great deal of admiration for. I just finished a biography of Abraham Lincoln. But I guess the historical figure that I am most impressed with was Thomas Jefferson. I've read a couple of Jefferson biographies, and he was a remarkable person. And most people remember him as a president of the United States and a founding father. Many people do not know that he also served. This guy was very versatile. He was Secretary of State, Ambassador to France. He founded the University of Virginia. He was an architect and designed many of the original buildings on that campus. When he founded the University of Virginia, he traveled abroad in Europe to select the first faculty for the university. He's just a remarkable person. He was the founder of the Library of Congress, donating books from his own collection. He's the father of the public library system in this country. He's the founder of the public school system in this country. He prevailed in his debates with Alexander Hamilton about whether or not formal education should be reserved for those who can pay for it, or should it be provided by the government. He eliminated the law on primogeniture, which was the law that provided that the oldest son of the father inherited the father's wealth. He eliminated that altogether. He just had a remarkable, I think, impact on American society in ways that a lot of Americans really don't realize. If I had to select one historical figure that I would qualify as a hero, it would probably be Thomas Jefferson.
I know I wrote an article one time where I said all my heroes were lawyers, about when I was an adolescent, talking about Mahatma Gandhi and John F. Kennedy. So I can understand Jefferson was one of my heroes as well, so I certainly can understand your affinity for Jefferson. But one thing I've always noted about your educational development is that you have been involved with a lot of parochial education. Do you have any other heroes in terms of your morals and religious leaders?
Not really. I mean, I guess my most significant heroes have been my parents. My father and my mother, who made a lot of personal and financial sacrifices to ensure that I received a quality education, and there were certain values that they tried to instill in me and my sister. Values that we depend upon today in the work that we do.
What mountains do you feel that you've had to climb to achieve your life goals so far, and what mountains do you see ahead of you?
Mountains that I've had to climb. I guess, one of the things I've always tried to do is every job that I've ever had and every task that has ever been assigned to me, I try to give it 110%, and not really, I don't really, I guess I've never felt that there isn't anything that I couldn't achieve if I give it my best. So I don't really, I can't really point to any obstacles or mountains that I felt have in any way interfered with my ability to accomplish my goals and objectives.
Okay. What changes have you seen in the legal profession over the years?
Well, there have been a number of changes since I first began practicing law in 1979. One of the more significant changes is that there's been a marked increase in both racial and gender diversity within the legal profession. When I became a member of the bar, there was only one black associate in a major law firm in Tampa, and maybe one or two in Miami, and that was about it in the state of Florida. There was just one black county judge in Hillsborough County. There were no women judges in Hillsborough County. There's been marked improvement in the diversity in both the legal profession and the judiciary over the last few years. It's not the case today. There's still room for improvement, but there's been a substantial increase in racial and gender diversity in both the judiciary and in the practice of law. I think the second biggest change that I've seen is the proliferation of lawyer advertising. It was not permitted when I first became a member of the Florida Bar, but as a result of Supreme Court rulings after then, bar regulations totally banning lawyer advertising have been held to be violative of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. And lawyer advertising is pretty much a way of law, a way of life in the practice of law right now. And the third biggest change that I've seen since I was admitted to the bar is the increased emphasis on continuing legal education. It is now mandatory, and it wasn't at the time that I was admitted to the bar. So I would have to say that those are the three biggest changes that I've seen.
Okay. Do you feel like the advertising has affected the public perception of attorneys and the legal profession?
I think in some ways it has negatively affected the public's perception of the legal profession, although I think the Florida Bar has done a very good job of regulating lawyer advertising and ensuring that the ads are tasteful and appropriate and proper. But it's now a way of life for lawyers now, and I think it's here to stay.
Okay. Do you feel like the legal profession has improved or gotten worse since you started the practice of law?
Clearly, it has improved. I think there's greater access to legal services than we have seen in the past. We've seen a strong emphasis on providing legal services for the poor through the expansion of legal service corporations. There's still room for improvement in terms of providing legal services to those who really lack the ability to pay for it. But I think the bar has made great strides in its efforts to ensure that the poor receive access to legal services through legal service corporations and providing pro bono services by private attorneys.
How do you see the practice of law changing in the next 100 years?
Well, there are a lot of developments that are taking place in the legal profession that I think will improve the way will change the way lawyers practice law. One of the major issues I think that is facing the legal profession today is how and whether we'll see multidisciplinary practice. I think that's probably one of the major issues one of the major issues that is facing the bar right now. It'll be interesting to see what developments take place over the next few years in terms of lawyers joining forces with other professions and providing services to the public.
Someday your child's going to come to you for guidance, if they haven't already done so, and ask you, do you think they should be an attorney? Would you recommend the practice of law to a child of yours? Well,
I have 2 daughters, and I would love to see one or both of them choose the law as a profession. I'm going to let them make their own choices, as my parents allowed me to do, but the law is a great profession. I'm a second-generation lawyer. I've always wanted to be a lawyer, and the practice of law has been very good to me. I'm going to let my kids make their own decisions now, but it'd be a real honor if one or both of my daughters decided that they will follow their father and their grandfather as members of the legal profession.
What recommendations can you give to judges, lawyers, and law schools on how to improve the legal profession and/or the legal training?
I think ethics, teaching young lawyers and law students ethics is very important. I would like to see ethical instruction integrated with other forms of education and continuing legal education. In other words, not teach it separately as a separate course, a separate ethics course, but have, for example, law school subjects that might address torts or business transactions, devote a part of the instruction in that course to ethics, and maybe during the course of instruction, pause and reflect on the ethical implications of representation of a lawyer in a certain area. In other words, rather than treat ethics as a separate subject, integrate it within other subjects in both legal education, in law school, and continuing legal education.
What recommendations could you give to law schools initially as to what you would like to see new or different in law school training? Would it be what you just mentioned, every course should address ethics and professionalism as an integrated part of the curriculum?
That would be my recommendation.
Do you feel that there should be a mentoring program for young attorneys where they could be trained by experienced attorneys after leaving law school and starting their legal career?
Mentoring is very important. And I look at my own contemporaries in the law. Those who have been most successful in their careers are those who have had the benefit of mentors early in their practice as lawyers. A perfect illustration of that, in my view, is Bill McBride, who's the president of the Holland & Knight Law Firm, which is one of the largest law firms in the United States. He's a very prominent lawyer in the state of Florida, in the country, for that matter. He's very active in the community, and he continually recognizes his mentor, who is Chesterfield Smith, a former president of the American Bar Association, and the impact that Mr. Smith has had on his development as a lawyer. That's a very visible, in my view, a very visible illustration of the importance of having a mentor as a lawyer.
how do you feel about formal mentoring programs? Right now we have 3 pilot projects in Florida where we're trying to set up formal mentoring programs. They've been approved for 15 hours of continuing legal education, and it's something that could be offered to people in sole practice or in a small firm environment where they don't have the opportunity to have a Chesterfield Smith helping them along the way.
Mentoring, as I said, is it's extremely important. And I recall back when I practiced law as a sole practitioner and I hung out my shingle just 2 years out of law school. I shared space with other lawyers, and some of those lawyers were more experienced lawyers, and it was very valuable for me to be able to walk across the hall or to walk downstairs and to run something by a more experienced lawyer. And I remember one case in particular, it might have been one of the first personal injury lawsuits that I filed on behalf of a plaintiff, and the defendant failed to answer within 20 days under the rules of procedure. So I thought I'd won the case. I was going to get a default, and the lawyer for the other side called and asked for a couple of days to file an answer, and I wasn't going to give him an opportunity to file an answer. I thought that would be a disservice to my client. And one of the more experienced lawyers in the office told me that it is professional courtesy to allow a fellow lawyer an extension of time for the purpose of filing an answer to a complaint. And I would not have known that had I not had that opportunity to walk across the hall and ask that more experienced lawyer, what would be appropriate under that circumstance. So that's an indication of how having a mentor as a young lawyer is very, very important.
And that's another example of how small things can establish your reputation. If you hadn't had that mentor available to you, that one thing might have set the course for your career.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, what things do you feel the legal profession is doing correctly?
I think the increased emphasis on alternative dispute resolution has really had a very effective impact on the law in terms of resolving disputes. The courts are very congested right now, especially the federal courts, and judicial resources are really not sufficient to effectively resolve the disputes that are brought before the court. So I think alternative dispute resolution mechanisms such as arbitration and mediation have been very effective in assisting the courts in resolving disputes without the necessity of costly and time-consuming and expensive litigation.
What areas do you believe can be improved upon by the legal profession?
I think reducing the cost of litigation is still very important. The delay that it takes to move a case through the system is very important, and I know there have been a lot of real strong efforts recently in a number of different ways to reduce the expense and delay associated with litigation. We're still attempting to determine the effectiveness of the Civil Justice Reform Act. And I think the jury is still out as to whether or not the reforms that are implemented by that act have been effective in reducing the cost and delay of litigation. But I think whatever other things that we can come up with to really eliminate or reduce the expense associated with litigation and the time it takes to get a case through a system to resolution, I think is very important for us to address.
Well, that brings me back to one of the other areas that we had discussed previously. How do you feel about the right to trial by jury? Do you feel that it's a right that should be available to all levels of litigants? Do you feel it should be restricted? Do you think that it's under assault, as so many of our personal injury attorneys feel?
I've always opposed any efforts to tinker with the jury system. I feel like it's a system that has served our legal system well for many years, and it's really a foundation upon which our justice system is based, the right to a trial by jury. So I would really, I would resist any efforts to really tinker with the jury system. I think, again, we continue to make efforts to resolve disputes through mediation and arbitration as much as we can. But if we're unable to do so, I would be very reluctant to interfere with the right of a litigant to have their case resolved by a jury.
How would you define ethics in the legal profession?
The thing that I think separates the legal profession from other businesses is that we are bound by a code of ethics, certain rules that we live by that really distinguish us from other businesses. Certain ethical rules that we abide by that ensures that we not only pursue our personal financial goals, but that we serve the public. So, that's really what ethics is that we abide by certain rules of professional responsibility that make us a profession.
I've heard professionalism defined as the 3 C's: character, competence, and commitment. How would you define professionalism?
Well, professionalism involves more than just rote adherence to the rules of professional responsibility, the ethical rules. It's a higher standard that we aspire to, and you can be an ethical lawyer and not be a professional lawyer. You're a professional lawyer if you're a person of integrity and honesty and trustworthiness, and you're fair and courteous in dealing with the court, in dealing with other lawyers, and in dealing with those who are involved in our justice system, including judges, jurors, witnesses, people who are involved in our judicial system.
I know we've touched upon it previously, but what are your core beliefs that you feel have helped you throughout your life?
Well, I've always believed that every task that is assigned to you and every job that you have to give it 110%. And for a lawyer or a judge, every case, regardless of how big or small it is equally important. You just have to give 110% to every matter that is assigned to you. And I've tried to follow that rule in my service, and I advise others to do the same.
If you were absolutely guaranteed that your advice would be followed, what advice would you give to those in the legal profession today?
The same advice that I just said.
Right. Okay. Well, that concludes the questions that have been given to me. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to those people who will be watching you and looking to you as a mentor in professionalism?
No, I think your questions have been very thorough.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.